Hi there, this is Eshu. I'm the abbot here at Zenwest Buddhist Society. This Living Zen-podcast is just one of the many resources we've created at Zenwest to make Zen practice and training more available and accessible to people all over the world. Instructional videos, printable resources, and much, much more are also available on our website at www.zenwest.ca. If you're a regular listener, I'd love to hear from you. So please drop me an email at office@zenwest.ca and let me know who you are, how you got started, and what brought you to Zen. Everything we make available in person and online at Zenwest is only possible because of the support of our members and associates, people like you. If the efforts of our community are making a difference in your life, I'd like to invite you to show your support and take part in making it happen by becoming an associate or member of the Zenwest Sangha. You can do this by clicking the Join Us tab on our website at www.zenwest.ca. Thank you for your support, and thanks for listening.
Tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about heart. One of the things that I've really become aware of lately in my own life, I think we're all aware of it, but it's just been more acute for me lately, is how very easily I'm distracted by external happenings, or what I take to be external happenings. We live in a world and in a time and in a culture where there's like flashing lights going off all of the time. If we're connected to our computer or internet, which I don't know if there's anybody here who's not really connected to the internet an awful lot, there's always something happening. And lately it seems to me like it's always something increasingly terrible, repeatedly over and over again. The number of contacts, human contacts on the other end of the interweb that I have seems to ever increase, even though I'm doing all I can to sort of whittle away at the number of contacts that I have. My point in talking about this is that my awareness or my attention is always being drawn like a fish towards out there. And it becomes more and more increasingly difficult to be aware of what's going on in here. And this is one of the primary focuses of this practice, is to just bring ourselves back to this moment, bring ourselves back to this body, this mind, this heart. So I wanted to talk about the heart of our practice a little bit tonight. Heart is a word that comes up in Zen practice a lot. The first thing we do when we sit down is we bring our voices together. We do this humming practice and this toning practice, before we start chanting. And even that is in many ways an initiation of heart. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. We use this translation, heart, for a kanji character, shin. Shin is a translation or an interpretation of the word hridaya in Sanskrit. Hridaya. And shin in Japanese, and I think in Chinese as well, is a word that's often translated as heart. But it's also translated as mind. And it's also translated as spirit, or energy, or essence, I guess you could say. So when we're talking about heart, shin in Zen, hridaya in Buddhism, we're not just talking about the physical organ of the heart, which is what we often do when we're talking in English, is we divide this heart or our emotions from our mind or our brain or our conceptual function. And when we're talking about heart in Buddhism, often you'll even hear it translated as heart-mind. One of the things that I think is fascinating in Western culture is we're starting to really acknowledge and recognize that for many years, maybe centuries even, we've really put these two aspects of what it is to be human into conflict. We've had a conflict between being a logical, intellectual person and being an emotional, feeling kind of person. And these two sort of collide. And I think in Western culture, there's been this sort of attitude of superiority of the intellect. But recently what I've observed is that there's starting to be this real recognition that one without the other, actually, in either direction, is kind of dysfunctional. We had this concept of IQ, and for many years when I was young, lots of people used to brag about how high their IQ was. But then recently, people started to come up with this concept of EQ, right? Where it's like, wow, if you have 160 IQ or something like that, that's great. You can figure out a lot of puzzles, but you won't be able to understand what someone's hinting at the party, right? And so in Buddhism, what we want to acknowledge is that there is this capacity that we have as human beings that embodies both the heart, our emotions, our feelings, our energy, our love. And it also embodies our capacity to think, to reason, our minds. And so whenever I'm talking about mind or heart in the context of Zen Buddhism, I'm talking about this complete aspect of what it is to be human, what it is to actually exist. It goes beyond being human. This is another thing that is really different in the way that we approach mind from the perspective of Buddhism than we do from human or from science, Western culture, is that we tend to be very snobby about what it is to be a human being, and that it's human beings that really have heart and really have mind. But from the perspective of Buddhism, it is out of mind that all things in this cosmos arise. The plants, the rocks, the trees, the animals, the water, the air, and the people too. All arising out of mind. Mind as the complete heart, complete spirit. I don't like the word spirit so much. We have so much baggage with that. The complete essence of the cosmos. But this is an important point. The first chant we do is called the Heart of Perfect Wisdom. The Mahaprajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. And in this sutra, if we read it in English, the most common word we come across is no. So it says, no form, no sensation, no perception, no dispositions, and no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no object of sight, no object of hearing, no object of smell. No, 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 no. And in Japanese, this word is mu. And mu means no, but it also means without. And again, this word is an interpretation of the Sanskrit word shunyata, which is often translated as emptiness. And emptiness is at the beginning. It says, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, practicing deeply prajna paramita, recognize that all 5 skandhas are empty, thus relieving all anguish. Shariputra, form is empty, emptiness is form. So when we think about emptiness, again, our conceptual mind tends to think of emptiness as a thing. Emptiness as a voidness. But when we talk about emptiness from the perspective of Buddhism, we are talking about something that is empty of something. What is it? Before all of the people walk into this room, we've laid out all of the cushions. We can say that the room is empty. But that's a very specific statement. Is the room really empty? No. It's got plants in it, and it's got tables in it, and it's got lights in it, and it's got cushions in it. And even if all those things were there, it would have air in it. But we can still say that it's empty. The question is, empty of what? So in the context of this room, we would be talking about empty of people. When we talk about emptiness in the context of Buddhism, we're not talking about a voidness. This is not nihilism. Form is not nothing. Form is the manifestation of emptiness. Emptiness in the context of Buddhism is referring to an absence of a differentiated self. So when we talk about emptiness, another way that we can look at it is to completely flip it around. And if we say we take everything in this whole universe and we begin to melt it down, we begin to take every human being and melt them down so that the body disappears, so that the elements dissolve into one another. The fire meets the water, and the earth meets the air, and all of this stuff that we see, all of the waves on the ocean, they come to a flat surface in which there is nothing that stands outside of it. There is nothing to stand up and judge. There is no separation for one thing to look at another thing. When we've taken this whole cosmos and dissolved it into this unified, complete whole, which has as its content the potential, the origin, the source of everything in this vast cosmos, but there's nothing that we can say about it. There's nobody to say anything about it. There's nothing that stands outside of it. We call this emptiness. There is an absence of I. There is an absence of self. There's an absence of differentiation. But it's not empty. It's not nothing. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It is all things. It's the state of the pregnant, unborn, cosmos. And we can experience this in our own practice, in our own zazen, and we can experience it in all kinds of aspects of our lives. We can experience it in creation. We can experience it in embrace. We can experience it in work, when all of the seemingly disparate aspects of the thing that we're doing suddenly dissolve and fuse. And we lose time, we lose separation, we lose our place in what seems to be going on, and there is this experience of it. For most of us, this lasts just a flash, just a moment. And we are born again. We separate and we say, that was amazing, or that was, oh, now that was really it, or ha ha ha, that was really funny. Having stepped outside of our own laughter, we have this reflective capacity, this separation that's born. So when we talk about wisdom, when we talk about emptiness, we're talking about this experience of the unborn completeness that's present in all things in this universe, in this cosmos. And when we recognize it and experience it in ourselves, we usually experience it in a small way first. Maybe just looking at a flower, or maybe just hearing the sound of a bird. And we recognize deeply that the sound that we're hearing, the flower that we're seeing, maybe the smell of incense that we're smelling, the food that we're tasting, the touch that we're feeling, there is an intimacy. There is an intimacy that goes beyond subject-object intimacy. There is an intimacy that is born of a shared origin. This is something that can't be explained. It's something that can't be described adequately. But when we experience it, this origin is felt, it's experienced. So when we talk about heart in Buddhism, and when I talk about clarifying this matter of heart in our practice, what I'm talking about is engaging in this practice in such a way as that knowing that returning to our origin, returning to this source, returning to shunyata, becomes an experienced practice rather than a theoretical or philosophical idea. I think it's really actually quite easy to grasp as a concept. I think that, the people who are into physics are really, they've been talking about this for years, that this is reflected in what they are seeing in their practice. But understanding it in our head, being able to say, I and this world and the people in the other country and the air around us and the whole universe, we are all intimately connected and affect one another. It's one thing to say it in our head. I know that it's one thing to say it in our head because we can say it, we can understand it, and we can still act in a way which is fundamentally discordant with that fundamental reality. When we experience that, when we deeply connect with that intimacy of a unified origin, we cannot continue to behave in the way that we have been. Our conduct has to change. it becomes intolerable for us to continue down this path which is based on an idea of separation, which is based on an idea of that over there and me here. And sometimes, if it's a very strong realization, that flip can be really abrupt. But generally, what I've seen is that there is a kind of awakening and the beginnings of an examination of every aspect of our lives. We begin to deconstruct all of the habits that we have and all of the patterns that we have, the relationships that we have, the work that we do. And we begin to examine it through the lens of practice, through the lens of awakening, through the lens of our heart, our complete heart-mind. And in some ways, it's not something that we do as a work or as a, I need to do this. I like to, the way that I experience it, the way that I look at it is it's very much the same as when we begin our chanting with a hum. There is a sound. There is a sound that our home makes. There is a sound that the mother makes. There's a sound that our origin, shunyata, makes. And as we develop in our practice, we begin to more and more harmonize our lives, our relationships, our interactions, and the way that we move in the world to that fundamental sound. So I suppose another way that we can just look at our practice is that we're going to sit down and we're going to shut up and we're just going to listen to the sound of the cosmos. As we stand up and move into our lives, all we need to do is not become better Buddhists or not press our practice into our daily lives. It is simply to become harmonious. This isn't something that we can do with just our heads, and it's not something that we can do just with our understanding. We really have to open up our hearts. We have to open up our whole mind and our whole body and our whole hearts and our whole selves to this experience of the complete cosmos before form.
Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.